ঢুলায় ইবানর হরি হাদি করি চামর ঢুলায় সঞ্জয় মুকুন্দ বাসু ঘোষ আদি গায় সঞ্জয় মুকুন্দ বাসু ঘোষ আদি গায় শঙ্খ বাজে ঘণ্টা বাজে বাজে করতাল কিবা শঙ্খ বাজে ঘণ্টা বাজে বাজে করতাল মধুর মৃদঙ্গ বাজে পরম রসাল মধুর মৃদঙ্গ বাজে পরম রসাল শঙ্খ বাজে ঘণ্টা বাজে মধুর 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 বাজে শঙ্খ বাজে ঘণ্টা বাজে মধুর 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 বাজে শঙ্খ বাজে ঘণ্টা বাজে মধুর 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 বাজে গৌরাঙ্গের আরতি শোভা জগজন মন লোভা হরি বল হরি বল হরি বল হরি বল বহু কোটি চন্দ্রজিনী বদন জল কিবা বহু কোটি চন্দ্র যিনি বদন উজ্জ্বল বলো দেশে বনমালা করে ঝলমল বলো দেশে বনমালা করে ঝলমল 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 করে ঝলমল 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 করে বলো দেশে বনমালা ঝলমল 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 করে বলো দেশে বনমালা ঝলমল 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 করে শিব শুক নারদ প্রেমে গদ গদ কিবা শিব শুক নারদ প্রেমে গদ গদ ভকতি বিনোদ দেখে গোরার সম্পদ ভকতি বিনোদ দেখে গোরার সম্পদ জয় গৌরনিতাই 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 জয় গৌরনিতাই জয় গৌরনিতাই 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 জয় গৌরনিতাই জয় শ্রী কৃষ্ণ চৈতন্য প্রভু নিত্যানন্দ শ্রী অদ্বৈত গদাধর শিবাসাদি গৌর ভক্ত বৃন্দ জয় শ্রী কৃষ্ণ চৈতন্য প্রভু নিত্যানন্দ শ্রী অদ্বৈত গদাধর শিবাসাদি গৌর ভক্তবৃন্দ জয় শ্রী কৃষ্ণ চৈতন্য প্রভু নিত্যানন্দ শ্রী অদ্বৈত গদাধর শিবাসাদি গৌর ভক্তবৃন্দ জয় শ্রী কৃষ্ণ চৈতন্য প্রভু নিত্যানন্দ শ্রী অদ্বৈত গদাধর শিবাসাদি গৌর ভক্তবৃন্দ হরে কৃষ্ণ হরে কৃষ্ণ 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 হরে 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 রাম 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 হরে 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 কৃষ্ণ হরে কৃষ্ণ 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 হরে 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 রাম 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 হরে 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 কৃষ্ণ হরে কৃষ্ণ 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 হরে 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 রাম 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 হরে 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 কৃষ্ণ হরে কৃষ্ণ 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 হরে 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 রাম 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 হরে হরে Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ramo Ramo Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Jaya Gaur Hari Nitai Gauranga Jaya Gaur Hari Jaya Sati Nandana Jaya Sati Nandana किशोर किशोरी जय किशोर किशोरी किशोर किशोरी जय किशोर किशोरी जय किशोर किशोरी जय किशोर किशोरी किशोर किशोरी जय किशोर किशोरी जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा जय सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय भक्त प्रह्लाद लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय प्रह्लाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल
जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिभाजक आचार्य श्रोत शत श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांता स्वामी शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिभाजक आचार्य श्रोत शत श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर गोस्वामी महाराज शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। नामाचार्य शिला हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्णा चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्णा गोपा गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवदीप मायापुर धाम की जय। पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। जमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय। श्री श्री किशोर किशोरी की जय। श्री श्री किशोर किशोरी की जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा महारानी की जय। श्री श्री गौर निताई की जय। निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे। All glories to assemble devotees. All glories to assemble devotees. All glories to assemble devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Guru and Gauranga.
नमस्ते नरसिंहाय नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रहलाद लाददायिने हिरण्यकाशीपूर्वक्षः शीलदङ्कानकालतो नृसिंह परतो नृसिंह Yato yato yami tato nasimha. Bahe nasimha hridaye nasimha. Narasimhamadim sharanam prapate. Sharanam prapate. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pralada lada daine. Hiranyakashi purvaksha. Shilatangana kalahare. Ito nasimha parato nasimha. Yato yato yami tato nasimha. Nasimha bahe nasimha hridaye nasimha. Narasimhamadim sharanam prapate. Tava kara kamalavare nakham adbhuta singam. Dalita hiranyakashipo tanuvenda. Keshavadutta nararirupa. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Tava kara Hare Naka. Kodanurenda Keshavadita Hare Jai Jai Jagadish Hare Jai Nrsingadev 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 Jai Nrsingadev Jaya Narari 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 Jaya Narari Jaya Narari Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Shri Shri Vigna Vinashaka Ganesh Singh Dev Bhagwan ki Jai. Bhakta Shiromani Prahlad Maharaj ki Jagat Guru Sevan Abdullah Shri Prabhupada ki Jai.
really? They've been skipping? Can I get a Gita? There you go. Hare Krishna. Can I get a harmonium? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. I get some cartels. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari. Jasodha Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodha Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Balaba Girivardhari. Jasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gaura Brahmanandi. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshunum Litam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. I request the blessings of everyone. You can just like do something that gives like a sadhu, something. Everyone can do like this or something. Give some blessings. Go like this. Give some blessings. The sadhus, they bless like this in India, isn't it? I haven't done public speaking like this in a big crowd in a while, and I don't like to do it because it's a little difficult, it's a little challenging. So I need your well wishes and blessings. Today we're going to discuss the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is traditionally called as Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which means Arjuna's Yoga of Dejection. You'll discover in this Bhagavad Gita that every chapter is referred to as some type of yoga. The second chapter, for example, is called Sankhya Yoga. The third chapter of Gita is known as Karma Yoga. Fourth chapter is known as Gyan Yoga, Dan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So in one sense, this Gita is the 18 yogas, on the 18 yogas you can say. Each chapter is named as some particular type of yoga. And in the Bhagavad Gita, the word yoga is used to refer to a method by which some goal is achieved. That's the general way the word yoga is used in the Bhagavad Gita. Although the word yoga has many meanings, the general way that it's used in the Bhagavad Gita is to refer to a process or method that one uses to accomplish their goal. You follow? So every chapter has a particular goal that it's trying to achieve by your reading that. For example, Sankhya Yoga, which is the name of chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga literally means, can be translated as the yoga of analysis. And the goal of chapter 2 is to help us, the readers, discern the difference between matter and spirit, between consciousness and matter. Because only by such discernment can you begin to desire spiritually. If you don't know that you're something different from matter, then you'll never have any spiritual desires. So you need to be able to discern the difference between consciousness and that which is not consciousness, that which is me and that which is not me, so that you can understand what is beneficial for me and what is actually not beneficial for me. So the goal of chapter 2 is to help us to develop discernment between consciousness and matter. For example, then Karma Yoga is a chapter. What is the goal of Karma Yoga? How do we work in the world with that discernment? Because now we may be knowing something theoretically, consciousness is different from matter, but you may not know what to do with that on a practical level, right? Just like when I would distribute the books at DePaul University, oftentimes I would meet students and I would ask this question to them: who are you? And many times they will tell their name. That's natural. If I ask you also, who are you, you will probably give the name also. And then I would do this thing, well, if you change your name, are you a different person? And they'll say, no. Then I'll ask, who are you? And sometimes they'll give their name again, and clearly showing they didn't understand. But sometimes I would meet people who would say that they were souls, which is very rare, and usually they were Christians. And then, who are you? They will give the answer that they were souls. So then I would ask them a follow-up question for those who were so clever, which was very few. I would ask them, what does a soul do? And then they would say, well, I brush my teeth when I get up in the morning, and I take a bath. So clearly they didn't understand that there was a difference between consciousness and matter, or the implications of what that meant. So then chapter 3 is known as Karma Yoga, and the goal of that chapter is to show you how to work with that discernment. So each chapter is called a type of yoga, and each chapter, in a sense, is trying to accomplish a particular goal, so that the reader, by the end of that chapter, could fulfill that particular goal by following that yoga, which is mentioned in that particular chapter. You follow this language? Everyone can understand. So this is first chapter of Gita is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which means the yoga of dejection. So then the question comes, what is the goal of chapter 1? And how does lamentation serve as a process by which we can achieve that particular goal? You follow? So anyway, how many of you have actually read the Bhagavad Gita? Honest. Okay, a few people. That's what I expected also then. No. So what is the goal of chapter 1? And how does lamentation help one to achieve that particular goal? And also, in answering this question, Krishna also implicitly underscores for whom this Bhagavad Gita is actually meant for. Because normally we think that not normally. Actually, if you think about it, everyone is not qualified for all types of knowledge. There is so many knowledge that is there. Just like there's knowledge of astrophysics. You heard of this thing before, at least. How many of you are qualified for this knowledge to understand it? Someone starts giving presentation on astrophysics, then you can understand. You need some qualifications for understanding that. How many of you here are IT? Many. So then you have some particular qualification by which if someone shall give a presentation on IT, whatever that looked like, you have the ID card for understanding that subject matter, isn't it? So you need some qualification for understanding different types of knowledge. There's so many types of knowledge out there. But in order to comprehend it and to assimilate it, you need some qualification for that, isn't it? Somehow or other, when it comes to spiritual knowledge, everyone thinks themselves very qualified. If I asked you, do you know something about, biochemical engineering? Oh no, I don't know anything about that. You become quiet, Mona, Bretta. If I ask you if you know something about astrophysics, you also, anyone here know? No one knows. Quiet. Then I say, you know anything about Bhagavad Gita? Everyone, oh. And then the other they say karma neva dikariste, this very famous thing they're called. And Americans, they'll just speculate something. Many times I've met Americans, oh yeah, I know Bhagavad Gita. So actually, what is the ID card needed for understanding this particular literature? It's also a type of knowledge, and you need qualification for understanding knowledge. It's not that anyone can understand anything. So then what is the qualification for understanding this Bhagavad Gita? So this question is also indicated implicitly in chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita. So two things we'll try to examine today for our benefit. Number one, what is the goal of Bhagavad Gita? And how does lamentation help one to achieve that particular goal? And number two is really a concomitant feature. Who has got the ID card for really understanding this Bhagavad Gita? So many people who have read Bhagavad Gita here. Many people have probably read it. Many have read Gita here. How many honestly can say they understand it, they can present it to others in a very compelling sort of way, and so on? Not so many, right? So then that brings into question, what is our ID card for understanding the knowledge? Why I'm, even after so many years, sometimes it's a little bit humbling, someone asks you a question, because you actually do not know. So these two things have to be understood, and that is actually indicated in the first chapter. I know when I personally read the first chapter of Gita, I thought it was just a bunch of names. And as a Westerner, we couldn't pronounce anything. Yudhishti Ra. We said in a very Duryodhana, like that. And then so many names are like that, Bahulashra, this name, that name. We're like, what is this use of this first chapter? And the philosophy doesn't even come into chapter 2. So Gita for me, for at least the first 5 years, was the chapter that was just there for decoration. Okay, first chapter. No one actually ever read the first chapter. It was never actually useful. But actually, it is very important, and we're going to discuss that now. So, trying to examine what is the actual goal of this Bhagavad Gita, and how does Vishada means lamentation, how does it help us to achieve this particular goal? So, Bhagavad Gita, like any other book, is a book of knowledge. And so there are so many things to know in this world. But what is the knowledge that you end up actually learning? There are many things that you could know in this world, and there are many things that you already know in this world. Just like how many of you know how to play basketball? Okay, only one person. Okay. How many of you know how to play cricket? Many are there. So you know how to do this thing. You know how to eat food. And you may not, yes, we're very good eaters of the food. And maybe some people know how to cook the food. I suspect a less number, but. So there are many things you could know in this world, but you don't know everything. And that is also not possible. So out of all the types of knowledge you could know, what is the knowledge that you end up actually knowing? What's the answer to this? Out of all the things you could be knowing in this world, what is the actual knowledge that you end up actually knowing to some degree? The one that you were looking for, isn't it? That's the knowledge you end up learning. The knowledge you're looking for. I like to give this example. I don't know why I give this example, but I don't know. Somehow this example sticks out to me. When you go to the Jewel Osco. Many of you may shop at the Jewel or Walmart or something. So there's one aisle, there's a medicine aisle, is there. And the Jewel Osco, along with the clothing and the foodstuffs and all that. But many times you may not even care for going in that aisle. Or if you walk through the aisle, you never even notice it. It's just like, it's an aisle. You don't see it as the medicine aisle. You just, it's one aisle, you walk past it and so on. It doesn't really register in your mind until one day you get heavy headache, really heavy, like migraine style. Then all of a sudden, you go to the Walmart and you see one aisle is there. And you're having question, where is the medicine aisle, isn't it? And someone will tell you the medicine aisle is there. Now, the aisle was always there, but it did not become apparent to you or interesting for you until you had the headache. And then what does a headache inspire within you? Some question is there, isn't it? Where is the headache aisle? Isn't it? A practical thing. There's nothing very mystical here. A very practical thing. You get a question about where the headache aisle is, and you go to the headache aisle to get the medicine so you can cure your problem, isn't it? So the knowledge that a person ends up knowing is the knowledge that he investigates in a sincere way. But we're not always inspired to investigate so many things. And certainly many of us don't feel inspired to investigate the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? How many of you feel very enthused to investigate Bhagavad Gita? To study it deeply, one person, two people, three people, four. I thank you for your honesty. Hardly anyone is so interested in investigating Bhagavad Gita. So then you can't really know the Bhagavad Gita unless you become interested in investigating it, isn't it? So then what inspires a person to investigate any form of knowledge? What is the inspiration for that? You want to be happy, isn't it? That is the bottom line. Whether you call yourself an atheist or a theist or whatever you call yourself, the bottom line is you want to be happy. And you also want to be happy unceasingly. There should be no breakage in the happiness. There should be no limitation placed upon the happiness, isn't it? In other words, you want happiness without the distress, because the sources can be different, isn't it? The sources of happiness and distress can be different. Just like when I got my first and only job, which was at the Gap, then it was my first and only job. It was when I was 18. I only worked there for 3 months because I had a bad problem chanting Hare Krishna really loud in the back. So the manager thought I was a little bit kind of like loopy, so he fired me. But at my one and only job, my first job, so when you're working many, many hours, you become very happy that I'll get so much money. You're calculating in your head, isn't it? Oh, I'll get this much. And then you feel very happy, I'll get so much money when the paycheck comes. So then you feel when the boss gives you the paycheck, you experience some happiness, isn't it? But then when you open it, you realize that there's a government also. And the government is taking so much of the money. And then you feel distressed. So as one person, from one source you're getting happiness, from another source you're getting the distress, isn't it? So the goal of human life, or any life for that matter, is happiness without the distress. We want happiness in which there isn't a limitation placed upon it. But unfortunately, because of conditioning, what does it mean to be conditioned? Condition means that you experience something, and that experience causes you to repeat that same experience again and again without thinking about it. You become habitualized to something. So in other words, for example, you eat a cheesecake. How many people here like cheesecake? So when you eat the cheesecake, that creates a very nice experience. And that experience makes you want to repeat it, isn't it? So that next time, when you see a cheesecake, without thinking, you go after it. You don't even if it's a kadashi, someone puts out a cheesecake, ooh, cheesecake, and you will go and just eat it. And then someone may say, it's a kadashi. Oh, I didn't even think about that, Because you've been conditioning means you become habitualized to act in a certain way without actually thinking about it. This actually happened to me, admittedly. This happened to me actually about 2 months ago. We went to a friend's house, and they made some cookies, but it was on a kadashi. Now, I knew it was a kadashi. We had a kadashi meal, but then we were driving back from this friend's house, and then I just popped one cookie in the mouth, I totally forgot it was a kadashi because I like cookies. So I was habitualized to eating cookies. So I just popped the cookie in my mouth, ate it. Then when we got home, I was like, oh, it's a kadashi today. Actually, I was driving with Mukunda. Mukunda was like, yeah, I saw you doing that, but I was like, why didn't you say anything? He said, because I just thought you didn't care. It wasn't that I didn't care. I'm not that much of a rebel. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was a conditioned pattern. Whenever I see cookie, grab it, put it in the mouth. It's simple. There's no need for processing and all this. This is called rag, actually. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in fact, defines rag, and it's something that you do without any intellectual processing. So the attraction to the cookie. So we've become conditioned to enjoying this world in a particular way, and we never question our methods of enjoyment because we're conditioned or habitualized to act in that particular way without any processing. And our whole goal in doing so when we search after the pleasure is for getting the experience of happiness without any limitation on it. Huh? Because in the material world, our happiness has so many limitations to it. Just like, same example, cookie or cheesecake. You cannot eat the cheesecake. There's limitations to enjoying the cheesecake, isn't it? Even that supposed cheesecake is the thing that you enjoy most in this world. But even to get that happiness, there's so many limitations upon it. For example, you cannot eat the cheesecake all the time. That means at any time, like right now, if someone is eating the cheesecake in the temple room, that is not possible. Because you will be asked to leave. Why are you eating the cheesecake at this time? It also be seeming disrespectful. So you cannot eat the cheesecake in all times and in all spaces. Similarly, you have to get the cheesecake somehow. I can give another example, but I always feel a little uncomfortable giving this example because it may be deemed a little inappropriate. The other example is the illicit sex. Everyone is attracted, probably, undoubtedly, right? Confirmation. Anyway, is that a little inappropriate to say? Anyway, Bible Tom talks about it quite a bit. So it's not that inappropriate. So someone is attracted to the sex life, especially nowadays when it's propagated. But you cannot enjoy sex life at all times in all spaces. Although they're trying to change that now gradually. But at the present moment, for the time being, you cannot enjoy at all times in all spaces sex life. That is not possible. Also, it is not always within your control. You have to find some partner, go through so much trouble of dressing nicely, smelling good, spending money, taking to movies, all these things are there. So much trouble you have to go. So in the material world, our happiness has so many limitations upon them. And most of our life is spent just trying to circumvent the limitations of our happiness, avoiding the distress and making it a situation where our happiness doesn't experience any limits, any limitation is forced upon it. Yes? So actually, we don't have this particular knowledge. And this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita is meant to give the experience of how to have happiness without limitations upon it. Just like you have, for example, another example. This is a little bit more appropriate. You get married. How many people here are married? Many. Oh, not so many. Many. Okay. So this is going to be an honest test. And you can maybe make sure your spouse doesn't see you. But it's an honest test. Before you got married, how many of you were thinking this would be very wonderful? I'll become so happy if I become married. I'll be very happy. Who has thought like this? Okay, some people I know haven't thought like this. But for those who are married, who has thought like this for those who are married? Who has thought like this? Yeah, I'll be so happy. But then what was your actual experience? Then you wake up, husband is snoring. You look, oh, I didn't know you did this thing. Like this, in this way, I'm giving simple examples. The idea is that the happiness we're experiencing in this world has some limitation placed upon it. So Bhagavad Gita is meant to give a knowledge by which one can experience happiness without any limitation placed upon it. But the nature of happiness without any limitation is metaphysical. Because the material world the atmosphere in the material world is a limiting atmosphere. It's meant to restrict living entities, in fact. Just like you may want to fly, can you fly? So then they create an airplane. Why did you create an airplane? Because we could not tolerate that limitation of not being able to fly. So in order to circumvent that limitation, I create an airplane. Or you create a car so you can move at distances far wide. So the nature of the material world is to actually put restrictions upon a living entity. And we don't like that, so we try to figure out ways to circumvent the limitations of material nature. But in order to experience happiness all the time, then that happiness cannot be of the nature of material. It cannot be within the atmosphere which is limiting happiness. In other words, you have to look for the happiness within. Real happiness, in order to be experienced unceasingly, is a metaphysical truth. That means in any situation you can experience happiness no matter how heavy the situation is. So that would not be possible, for example, if you're in the winter, cold winter of Chicago, and that really impacts you, how you can be happy. But you cannot control the winter in Chicago. So if you want to be happy all the time, you have to transcend the limitations created by the Chicago atmosphere, for example. So to experience unlimited happiness, or happiness without limitation, that's how I'm translating it, then that sort of knowledge is a metaphysical type of knowledge. But because it is metaphysical, our tendency is not to look into that knowledge so intensely because it doesn't seem to impact us so much as the physical world does. So when we look for happiness, we look in terms of physical things, physical objects, and so on, isn't it? So in the Bhagavad Gita, now this is called the Yoga of Dejection. We're getting to that point. What is the goal of Bhagavad Gita? And how does lamentation help one to achieve the goal? The goal of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in short, is to help people come to the point of examining their lives, basically, and investigating a reality beyond the reality that they're conditioned to chase after. But the thing about, as I've already mentioned, that when you're conditioned, you chase after a particular reality without thinking about it, isn't it? So what happens in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you have Arjuna and other characters who are having to deal with the problem of imminent death. And that which follows imminent death is lamentation, isn't it? A battlefield, although we Gaudiya Vaishnavas accept it as actual history, it can also be viewed symbolically. So the Bhagavad Gita is a battlefield. So a battlefield is a place where the death is about to be experienced, isn't it? Or you can say imminent loss is about to be experienced. And what follows loss is the lamentation, isn't it? So you'll find that the pervasive psychology in the material world is one of crying or lamentation. In fact, there's one verse in the Bhagavatam where it says that the material world is a place that is an ocean of grief comprised of the tears of the conditioned souls. It is described like this in one place in the Bhagavatam. So the material world is a place where imminent loss is going to be there. And what happens when you're lamenting some loss? Then the material world doesn't seem so enjoyable, isn't it? Normally, we're just infatuated by the material world. We're just chasing after it. You know, some beautiful woman or beautiful man is there, some cheesecake is there. We're just chasing after the world and enjoying. But lamentation makes it, the situation created by lamentation is such that the material world does not become that appealing anymore. When you've ever had to deal, who here has dealt with loss before, some heavy loss? So when you're dealing with heavy loss, what happens? The material world does not seem so appealing before. You may like cheesecake and pizza, but if you just break up with your girlfriend and boyfriend, or you lose someone, dies in the family, then when you eat that pizza, you're just, I don't even like this. You know, all of a sudden it's not enjoyable. Why? Because you're dealing with some loss. So the nature of lamentation is that it creates a temporary space for one to question his existence, which is something that one is not accustomed to doing when he's infatuated by the material world. When we're just normally chasing after, we never examine how many of us ever take the time to question what it is that we're doing. Is this really going to bring me happiness? How many of us actually felt, we don't have time to think about those sorts of things, right? So the situation created by lamentation is that it provides a temporary space, because you're not going to be lamenting forever. You'll cry for 1, 2 days, 3 days, and then after that you go back into the program. It creates a temporary space by which one can examine the nature of his existence. And only one who has come to the point of questioning his existence, questioning metaphysically, is such a person qualified for actually understanding this Bhagavad Gita. Life itself is comprised of questions and answers, isn't it? When you wake up in the morning, you may say something like, "How are you?" And then someone will give an answer, "I'm fine." "How are you?" And then you say, "I'm fine." And then everyone's quiet for, it's like an awkward silence period. Then someone will say, "Did you see the game yesterday?" "Oh yeah, the game was really, really nice. Yeah, that shot so-and-so made was," and then there's an awkward silence. So many questions we may have. Or we may question about the TV show. What happened to that character? I couldn't get home in time enough to see that TV show. So most of the questions that we have are, how many of you have asked questions like this? How many of you watch TV shows? Only 2 people. Wow. Enlightened sages in the house. So no one wants to say. You're watching the television. Then sometimes you miss the episode and you call some friend. What has happened at that episode, isn't it? So these are the sorts of questions we're asking about. So when you ask certain inconsequential questions, then what are the type of answers you will get? Inconsequential answers, right? Not very important. And when your life is based on knowledge, which is inconsequential, then the result that you will get is also inconsequential. You follow? So first there is knowledge, and then underneath knowledge is this sort of inquiry. And then the nature of an inquiry will determine the nature of the knowledge that you have. So most of the time, because we're so infatuated with the world, our questions are not metaphysical, but they're about the physical world, how to get a job, how to make money, and et cetera, these sorts of questions. And so we get answers to those sorts of questions. But these answers do not provide the happiness for the soul. So when one is suffering in this material world, it causes him to, excuse me, I'm sorry. It causes one to question his existence and the question metaphysically. And for those who are having questions about how to deal with loss, then this Bhagavad Gita can speak to them. Otherwise, the Bhagavad Gita is not able to speak to you. There is something, there's a phenomenon that they call this cognition without recognition. You've heard of this before? Cognition without recognition means when you see something, but you don't see its relevance to you, so you don't recognize it as anything important or as anyone important. It's called cognition without recognition. For example, same example I gave earlier. You go to the grocery store and you see the medicine aisle, but it doesn't come out to you as anything very important until you get the headache. Then all of a sudden you begin to recognize it as very meaningful for you. So even practitioners of yoga or bhakti, even though they come to bhakti yoga and they study Bhagavad Gita, they may even read Bhagavad Gita, there can be this phenomenon of cognition without recognition. Why is there cognition without recognition? Because you have no questions about the actual nature of your existence. So when you read the Bhagavad Gita, nothing actually comes out to you, appeals. In fact, some of us who have practice of reading Gita will read Gita for 1 hour because it is our ritual to read Gita. But then you ask them, what did you learn from that? Learning. Then everyone becomes, learn. No, I just read Bhagavad Gita. Or in India, I know I've met many persons from India where they will just keep the Bhagavad Gita in some sacred space, like with some cloth is there. And then they will simply go to touch the Bhagavad Gita. They actually read it. They have this also practice. Why is that? Why is it that you can read the Bhagavad Gita, you have cognition of the things that they say, but it does not appeal to you, it does not register to the consciousness as anything meaningful. And the reason that this happens is because of the lack of inquiry. Unless a person comes to examine his existence, who am I really, what is the purpose of life, and so on, then even if they hear wisdom traditions, it will not register anything in the mind for their meaning. So in this way, lamentation becomes a friend. Because what happened to Arjuna in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita is that his having to deal with loss obliged him to inquire deeply about the nature of his existence. And only after such inquiry did Krishna speak the Bhagavad Gita, and could that Bhagavad Gita be meaningful to him. This is why, this is aside for those who are also religious or practitioners. Many times, at least for those of us who are Westerners, especially we didn't grow up with the Bhagavad Gita, what led us to taking up the Bhagavad Gita where we had many questions. And a lot of times this phenomenon takes place when after you feel that you found what you're looking for, the questions stop. This phenomenon is also very prominent. Now I have found my tradition. This is what I resonate with. These are the people that I resonate with. And therefore, there's no need for any more questions. I already know everything. I'm confident I'm on my way back to the spiritual reality or whatever. So in this way, even though they go on hearing this Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, it doesn't reveal anything to them. I often like to say that the revelation one receives from the scriptures is proportionate to the degree of the question. The depth of the question determines the depth of the revelation that the scripture gives you. So when you read the scripture without any inquiry spirit, then you get no revelation in return from it. But when you read it looking for truth, then it is able to reveal itself. Unfortunately, the nature of our existence, especially nowadays with technology, is to keep us infatuated with inconsequential inquiry about the TV shows, about the superstars, about the sports stars, and so on. So as long as we're infatuated with inconsequential inquiries, then Bhagavad Gita will not be a literature that one will be able to comprehend to any sort of degree. And so in this way, suffering becomes our friends because it obliges us to think a little bit more deeply about our existence and come to the point of questioning our existence. Only then is this Bhagavad Gita useful. So the goal of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, the yoga, Vishada Yoga, the goal is to set up the criteria by which this Bhagavad Gita can be spoken to all of us. And what is that criteria? The spiritual inquiry, the existential inquiry, the metaphysical inquiry about my existence. And so long as one is without such metaphysical inquiry, it is very difficult to find any meaning in the Bhagavad Gita. Mostly you will find more meaning in the rituals of a tradition, because rituals are also meaningful. But you'll find more meaning in just the activities themselves, but you will not find any meaning from the message, because the inquiry is lacking by which that becomes meaningful for you. This is a very practical thing. There's nothing very mystical about this. It is the same with any ordinary knowledge as well. The type of knowledge that you're able to learn deeply is the knowledge that you have questions about, the knowledge in which you're inquiring into. Unfortunately, most of the times, the spiritual quest is not something that we feel is our obligation. And so lamentation has a way of putting it higher on the priority list. And this way, suffering becomes a form of yoga, a method by which we can achieve the goal. In this case, the goal of existential inquiry, by which chapter 2, 3, 4, and so on becomes a meaningful sort of message for us. So this is the topic I wanted to make out. The basic differences between humans in this world are the type of questions that they're asking. This is the basic difference between humans. Among spiritualists, this is also the main difference between them, the types of questions they're asking. And if you want the message of Gita to be meaningful for you, then one has to come to deeply investigating these existential truths. So this is my discussion. I don't know what time you all stop at. I don't know what time actually. 6:30. Okay, so I'm 15 minutes early. Does anyone want to ask anything or open it up for some discussion? Okay, Himanshu wants to say something. Shivaram Prabhu wants to say something.
Hare Krishna. Sorry. I was just wondering, Arjuna was standing before Krishna, and so when he was lamenting, he had a person he had tremendous faith in from whom he could inquire. So this spirit of inquiry, what relationship does it have with the kind of association of the person you're with? Because one could say, I'm not inquiring because I'm not seeing someone to inquire from. Or is it something that's self-born? And then when it is self-born, then Krishna arranges the right person for you to inquire from.
Well, the main goal, so the question is, the reason Arjuna was able to ask questions from Krishna is because he had faith in Krishna. Okay, faith in Krishna, but it also means faith in what Krishna is giving him, which is actually the knowledge in this particular case. And there will be knowledge about Krishna also. So, and also, it's not only faith in the knowledge, but the knowledge has to be able to do something for you. The knowledge is able to remove the doubts, which are creating impediments to your happiness. So, your question was dealing with, is the inquiry like self-born, or is it because someone is there to inspire the inquiry? A lot of the questioning, as this chapter 1 proves, is that life circumstances obliges us to inquire. At that time, you look for a person who can give answers. So that may require asking the question to several persons. In fact, many persons do like this. They'll ask the same one question to many people. And then that person who can remove their doubts, then that is a person that they tend to build their faith on. Usually faith doesn't come magically, but it comes by a process usually. So someone is able to remove their doubts, and then so their faith builds. Then someone is able to give them knowledge of something they can do themselves. And by doing that, they start to experience a greater sense of self, a greater sense of happiness, and so their faith is built even stronger. Of course, Arjuna was already knowing Krishna for a very long time, so he already had that trust in him. But as far as our own process goes, usually what ends up happening is life obliges us to inquire. That's actually the purpose of suffering. And then you start to look for persons who can remove the doubts. And then more than remove the doubts, start to provide knowledge by which you can become happy. And you're starting to experience something from that knowledge that they're giving you. On that, your faith in those persons or person becomes stronger. At which case you start to surrender more and more to that particular individual. There's a natural process. There's nothing very mystical about that, actually. If Shiva Ram Prabhu wants to say something.
Hare Krishna. Sorry. Thank you for the joyful lecture on lamentation. That was nice, enjoyable lecture. Thank you. Jokes make it helpful to remember. Two questions I have actually. One is I had a friend who said that he would not like to approach Krishna in lamentation.
That's
So,
nice.
huh?
I said that's nice.
That's nice. Okay. And so I wasn't sure what to say to him because uh, he's not approaching Krishna at all. He's saying, which is not so nice. So I didn't know what to say to him. So that's one question. And the second question is, I came across Bhagavad Gita due to lamentation. And after a point, I also want to say to myself, I don't, I want to go past that also. So now want to approach Bhagavad Gita and Krishna without the lamentation part. So, any thoughts on both of these?
Well, your first question was how the response to the person, I don't want to approach Krishna for lamentation. I may have asked him, well, do you want to approach Krishna at all, since I don't see that you're doing that? Or you may ask him, how do you want to approach Krishna? Or you may give him the encouragement. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says 4 types of people approach him. Chaturvida bhajante mam. And then the one type is those who are in distress. And I suspect that's the main type. Because Krishna is a metaphysical entity. You can't see him, touch him, smell him, taste him, and so on. And so he's not the first person you'll think to approach at all for anything. Because Krishna, for most of us, is just an abstract being, like God. It's just like an abstract sort of idea. So he's not the first person you would think to approach for anything. But usually people intuit that when their suffering can't come from within the world. And so that time they become inspired to approach something metaphysical. They kind of intuit that my suffering is due to being in the world and being put in these conditions. And therefore, if I'm to be happy, it has to be something beyond the world that can help me. And so they tend to go towards God. And so suffering is a very strong impetus for that. So what is the problem in approaching Krishna for suffering? In fact, that is a function of suffering, to force us to inquire from someone who has the wisdom like Krishna. And your second question was?
Sorry, can I have a question again on the first one?
Okay.
There's like almost like a cinematic idea that I'll suffer, but I will not ask God for help with suffering.
So the suffering things will become more. That is the answer to that. Seriously, this is the answer. Because someone is proud, I will tolerate the suffering. Okay,
Right.
go on. But everyone's got a breaking point. So
Oh.
that means if someone is thinking like that, the suffering just needs to increase.
Oh.
Just like when we were little kids and our cousins would beat us up. Sometimes they would put us in a headlock and then start, and we would be like we're hurt, we're not gonna be phased, you know. Then they keep hitting until you say, "Uncle," you know. All right, enough is enough. I cannot take anymore. So similarly, Maya also does like this: material energy, life. You know, then you say, I will persevere. You'll see some Facebook quote. We'll get something about adversity and standing strong in adversity. You say yes. And Maya likes those types also. Good. Then I just make it a little bit more increase. And then that time when they're broken. So Arjuna came to a state where he was broken. He was not even able to hold his bow anymore. So sometimes that needs to happen for people because we are very proud also. Just like I meet so many people. I distributed books like this one time. This Bhakti book is there. It has Krishna gopis on it. So I would go in the streets and I would say, this book is about Krishna, pure devotion to Krishna and the gopis. And I'm talking about people in Belmont and Clark, you know, which is like, my people, you know. And then I was like, this book is about pure devotion to Krishna gopis. Oh, right on, you know. Or they said, oh wow, thank you very much. I'm like, you don't even know what that is, you know. I distribute a lot of books like that, just saying this because we are very proud. No one wants to admit that they need help. We're very proud persons. We don't want to admit that there's some ignorance. Just like you'll say some verse from Bhagavad Gita. And you know how when someone doesn't know something, you can see it in the eye. They don't know what you're talking about. But they'll go, yeah, like that. They don't know. But because they're very proud, they don't want to admit. So similarly, when it comes to suffering, we are also very proud in that department also. Nothing will break me. So, okay, let them increase then. So like that, let the suffering has to increase. Nothing else can be done. Someone is proud. I don't remember your second question. I'm sorry.
The second question is, so, I kind of joined or approached Krishna via lamentation, distress, and
So you want to
now
go beyond that.
I want to go beyond that.
So that means you should be hearing the philosophy and going beyond.
Huh?
You should be hearing the message of Gita and going beyond.
Sure.
Because the Bhagavad Gita was spoken to remove the lamentation.
Mm-hmm.
So then it is a question of awareness. The reason that we suffer is because of where we're investing our consciousness, our awareness. Just like, for example, someone calls you one bad name is there. They call you a bad name. You are some bad name. I'm not saying anything, just in case. And what happens is the mind will invest so much consciousness on that bad phrase that you're not able to think about anything else. You keep your awareness centered on that particular thing. And for that reason, we are suffering. Actually, there will be no suffering so much. It's what we are lending our consciousness to that causes us to suffer. So then if we're having some problems centering our awareness on something that will not cause us suffering, namely Krishna, for practitioners of bhakti, then we have to inquire what is the problem in my centering my awareness on Krishna and remove those things, the problem, or correct it, adjust it, whatever needs to be done in relationship. Otherwise, if you're many, many years hearing Bhagavad Gita, and still we are lamenting, then we may come to question our depth of investigation to the truth. Anyway, in any case, spiritual life is one of those things that you have to regularly go back to and take inventory. Okay, I came for this reason, now why am I here? Now that that reason is past, now why am I here? So spiritual life takes a lot of that, taking more and more inventory. But it is not that after so many years of hearing and practicing, we should be in the same spot. And if we are, then we have to ask a question about that and see if we can get an answer. Hey, there's a question here and question there, and then that might be it because time will be up. Gormani Prabhu.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. This is a very good class. I really like to thank you for that. I'd like for you to speak briefly on love and separation and spontaneous love of Godhead, since you're
Wow,
linking this up with so much.
This
This is a
since
deep
over
conversation. Your conversation, the first chapter of the Gita, because I think for many years, I ran from the whole idea of love and separation, but I'm beginning to embrace it, and it's just something that needs to be talked about, I think, more.
Well, that is a very huge topic. What I would say with the limited time that I'm having now is that Gaur Purnima is just passed. And Mahaprabhu himself is wanting to understand the mystery of this particular sort of love and separation, the ultimate dejection, yoga of dejection, in love and separation. So Mahaprabhu, he is in the position of God. So in the position of God, he cannot understand what the devotees are experiencing. So in other words, there's God himself. He's called as the object of love. And then there's his devotee, and the devotee is called as the vessel of love. So if you want to understand the vessel of love, then you have to become a vessel of love. So Mahaprabhu became the vessel of love because he wanted to understand that particular type of love. And then he spoke, you can say he did some investigation, some inquiry. Even God was put in such an existential situation that forced him to inquire. And to get the answer to his inquiry, he became a vessel of love, a devotee, namely Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And after doing so, he wanted his research work to be codified. So he left that to the Goswamis to codify his work in various literatures, which they have given for the future generations to try to understand what it is that Mahaprabhu was experiencing. So it was, and the unique thing about his research is that Mahaprabhu, he realized that it wasn't because of ignorance that we were suffering, but because of lack of love. That was the main finding of his pastimes. That even if you are liberated from the material conditioning where you don't identify with the world anymore, you're not suffering, that is not actually the real problem. The real problem is that people are without this particular love. So he came as a vessel of love, and he wanted his devotees to codify those teachings for us to understand deeply that particular subject matter. But it's a very, I mean, that's also a huge jump. Um, Not an unimportant one, though, but a very huge one. So my time was also up. So we'll just leave it there. There was one final thing, and then I have to stop because now time is actually up. I think you wanted to finish, or is it okay, or no? Should I? Is it fine?
Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Prabhu, I have a question in regard to when you said in the beginning of your class about the real happiness you can find only in the metaphysical inquiries or metaphysical goal or the metaphysical process, because this world puts you into a kind of situation where happiness cannot be unceasing. So my question is that even though as a devotee our practices, our goal and the process of that practice, like everything is metaphysical, but we are doing it in this physical world, and that tends to limit our actual happiness. So unless one either goes to the highest level, will still not experience that happiness.
Yeah,
So
the physical things do not limit the happiness. Just like Krishna says, Yehi sansparsha ja bhoga dukkha yanayavate. He says this verse that when senses contact the objects, then that gives that sort of happiness is the womb of suffering. It gives birth to the child of dukkha, the child of suffering. So just as Krishna is saying that there's happiness that comes from contact, that means it implies that there's a type of happiness that comes without the contact also, which means a metaphysical type of happiness. So just as one gets happiness by eating the cheesecake, there is also a type of happiness that doesn't involve eating cheesecake or anything with this physical world, but is a happiness that comes from within. But we don't know that science of experiencing that happiness within. And because our consciousness is centered on things external to ourselves, therefore we are not happy. So it is not that physical things create a situation where you cannot be happy within, but it's because how do you say, they seduce us to projecting our consciousness outwardly. Just like you see, like for example, you're chanting japa, and the phone is there just nearby. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. So as long as the phone isn't ringing, you might be a good boy or girl and you don't look at. But then the light will come on suddenly because someone is sending text message or something, so it lights up, and then when you see it, then what happens to your content? You pull out. So that way, the whole material world is attracting our attention outward, and the senses are designed in such a way that they go outward also. So in that way, we may be practicing the material world, but we're being obliged by the material energy to go outward. So Krishna wants to give a knowledge by which we do not acquiesce to that obligation. Where the material world will always be knocking at our door, but there is a way to not acquiesce to that obligation created by the. Only when we learn the art of not acquiescing to the external obligation are we allowed to experience the happiness from within. Otherwise, we cheat ourselves in this particular sort of way. So physical things cannot stop a person at all from experiencing happiness. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. My time is up. Thank you all very much for tolerating me. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much. Let's thank Jai Jagannath for his wonderful class. Before we leave and go for dinner, a couple of quick things. Friday, April 15, is the appearance day of Lord Ram. called Ram Navami. And we'll hear more about dejection in that pastime. That's from beginning to end is a lot for Lord Ram, and some lessons for us in hearing Lord Ram's life. And interestingly, that day will be, that entire pastime will be narrated by His Holiness Radhanath Swami. So he will be here. So make sure that your Friday night, this will be better than going to the movies. So Friday nights are way better. So Friday, April 15th, starting 6 p.m., we'll celebrate Ram Navami with His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. So in preparation for the festival, the 2 evenings previous, so 13th and 14th, we're requesting volunteers to help with stringing of garlands and cutting of vegetables and preparing for the festival. So if any of you is interested, as you walk out and before you go upstairs for prasadam, there's a team there. You can ask them the specific time, what's available for you, what might work out, and they'll let you know the specifics. We'd love for you to offer some devotional service in preparation of Lord Lam's appearance day. If for some reason that's not possible, then there are other ways. One of the things I've understood that, they're festival after festival. So this time our, I guess, fundraising is just to meet the expenses of the festival. So rather than, 108, 251, etc., we're only asking that you donate $51 for the festival. So that's all. You don't have to do more than that. We understand. There are festivals back to back. So only $51 if you can donate. Fantastic. We're looking for 100 devotees, or 100 in number. So rather than a few donating for the festival, we want to spread it across. So we're looking for 100 donations of $51 only. So see if that works out for you. In the desk in the front, let them know, and we'll like to see if we can cover the expenses for the festival, because we're expecting a lot of people. Each festival takes quite a bit. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. And anyone who's here for the very first time, on your way out, we have a gift for you as an appreciation. This wonderful Prabhu who keeps wearing all these colorful kurtas each time, Yashodanandan, he'll be at the door with your gift. Please make sure you take your gift from him. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wait. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Let me think about it. I lost it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Oh my God. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare Jaya Kishore Kishori Kishore Kishori Kishore Kishori Jaya Kishore Kishori Jaya Kishore Kishori Kishore Kishori Jaya Kishore Kishori Jaya Kishore Kishori Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai! Shishi Kishore Kishori ki Jai!